Hello, welcome to my channel. This is the higher dimensional spirituality channel, and this is my first episode. And welcome. In this episode, I'm gonna talk about why I think real estate will crash in the next few years, most likely by 2030. To start with, just that this is not investment advice, and so just listen it as it is my opinion. Um, so, as everybody knows, real estate is considered to be the safest investment. It's always going to go up. In the past 100 or plus years, it has never gone down. Everybody who invested in real estate always make a lot of money if they hold on for a long time. If they bought early, it's like a guaranteed return, right? So I mean, this episode is about the factors that affect real estate as an industry as a whole. So we're not going to go into whether or not you are able to make more returns in real estate by doing housework or like investing in the right place and all that stuff. We're not going to talk about that. We talk about the outside factors, not inside. That is going to affect the industry as a whole. And without further ado, I want to mention that there's going to be 9 main reasons why real estate will crash by 2030. Okay, so here we go. The first one is that we are currently experiencing a technological S curve, and if you're not sure what S curve means, feel free to look it up. It's basically goes like this. What that means is that uh, when something is being disrupted, uh, it starts off relatively slow, but then all of a sudden it comes to an inflection point and it shoots up really quickly, almost to a vertical cliff, or rather like a mountain, not a cliff, and then eventually plateaus out. But we are right at the beginning of this taking off, and a lot of things are getting disrupted, as you may notice, right? So many industries are having new ways of doing things. You know, not the least of which obviously is the electrification of you know of driving vehicles, right? And and how about the internet, right? That changes the way we organize information, and obviously also virtual reality, right? Eventually we don't have to like and also working remotely, all these productivity tools. So when a lot of areas are getting disrupted driven by the technology, right? You have to understand this is a technology S curve. um, Whatever is the most unwieldy, the more likely it is to get disrupted the hardest, right? Because there's reason to disrupt it. There's no reason for something to be so big and huge and humongous that changing anything is hard, and that's the way it has to be. It doesn't make any sense, unless there's a reason for that. And for real estate, there's no reason why it should keep going up, especially for the metropolitan areas, the big cities, where the price of a normal one family house for any family has exceeded 1 million or 800,000 or whatever. A price tag where the average American has no way of affording, right? An average American or family, right, averages about I think about $50,000 a year. I mean, to to just save up for that down payment, right? For example, if it's an $800,000 house, you need 20% down payment, and the lawyer fees will be 180 grand, right? How long does it take for them to save 180 grand with 50 grand salary? I mean, they have to support their family, they have to support themselves, they may have to support the car, or rent. So 50 grand at the end of the day, they can save at most 10 grand, right? A year. How long is going to take? Take you 18 years to get 180 grand. Don't forget, by the time you got 180 grand, the house is no longer 800,000, right? It's going to cost even more. So it makes no sense for something this big to not get disrupted. So this is the first reason. Basically, we are going through technology S curve. Things are getting disrupted, and the bigger something is, the more likely it is to get disrupted into smaller pieces. So the second reason is very related to the first one, right? With the bigger things being split into smaller things. But I call this the decentralization point, right? Or democratization of housing, basically. So you can already see there's a lot of examples of that, right? One of the bigger companies, right, called Airbnb, is already utilizing this concept in the sense that they're doing timeshare in a way, right? You have a house, but you own it, sure, but you're renting it out to other people. So how does this disrupt the ownership of real estate? If you can easily rent a nice, really attractive place and you don't have to clean up after, easily anywhere, anytime for a reasonable price, why would you need to buy a house here and buy a house there, buy a house in Nepal, buy a condo in London, buy a mansion in Florida? Why would you need to do that anymore? Like, it's not like you can be simultaneously living in multiple places like Dr. Manhattan, right? So you can only live at one place at a time. And if you have that much money, you probably don't want to stay in one place for an extended period of time anyway. So what are you gonna do? Like, everywhere you go, you buy a house, or are you gonna just travel around the world and leave your houses not doing anything, or you have to rent it out to some uh, uh, your renters gonna mess up your house. Why would you want to do that? So buying houses makes no sense these days with things like Airbnb and timeshare, vacation housing being so convenient. Um, so um, and there's generally so that's also a big reason, right? Because uh, really attractive real estate can now be shared much more easily than before. Um, and and for me, right, I'm a fire person, financial independence, retire early person. I plan to travel quite a lot with my family, and I don't really want to buy a big expensive house mansion and have to maintain it. I have to pay the real estate tax, right? Don't forget that, right? Any big mansion, you have to pay over like $1,000-2,000 a month on taxes alone. So I don't want to own anything huge, right? It makes no sense. That's why this affects the real estate expensive market, right? Because it makes no sense to buy expensive houses anymore. And so we go to the third reason, right? The third reason is remote working. uh, Now, with the viruses, flying around, it's brought to the public's attention that a lot of us don't really want to go into crowded trains or offices anymore for no reason. It's basically accounts for like 80%, 90% of our sickness, right? We get like a cold virus here, we get a flu virus there, we get some other crappy stuff from the subway or whatever, right? So with remote working, a lot of people actually, from where I live in East Coast New York City, they have moved out from the city into New Jersey or Pennsylvania or Staten Island, into wherever that's less crowded and much cheaper, possibly with their families, right? The families probably, their parents, older folks who live in suburbs, right? So they can now just live in the suburbs. Why would they want to pay 2x or 3x rents just to live in the city if they don't have to go into the office, right? Remote working is become a real big trend now, that we don't really care about going into the office anymore. And that, living close to where you work is a major reason why people want to buy real estate or rent real estate and pushing the real estate price higher, right? So there's a huge reason. A lot of things can be done remotely. A lot of things can be done in virtual reality. There's really no point to be stuck in the city, to live in the city, unless you are in there for the nightlife, where physical contact is required, right? But if you don't really, but even if you want that, are you willing to pay that much for it? Why don't you just travel? If you only gonna do the nightlife like 2 times a week, why not just drive into that place or take a train or something, right? Or take an Uber, much cheaper than renting a place for $3,000 for a small apartment in Manhattan, right? So remote working is another big reason, right? Why it's pushing the price down, and we can already see some of that. But right now, Manhattan is getting a bit of a rebound after the big dip in price. But people are gonna realize soon that the overall trend is going out to the suburbs, right? And now to the fourth reason, we have 3D printing. You know why real estate is really expensive? Is because mostly of the labor, right? I mean, the material alone is really cheap. I'll give you an example, right? Like a very good constructed brick house, the material alone probably costs less than 200 grand. But with the labor and everything, it's gonna cost 400 grand plus, right? And that doesn't still account for the land value, right? You know, if you try to build that in New York City, the land alone could cost you 500 grand, right? Even if there's nothing on the property, they can sell it for 500 grand because they expect you to have to spend about 200 grand on material and 200 grand on labor. So basically, if they have a house there, it would be worth 900 grand at least. That's why they're selling the land alone for 500 grand. So anyway, the land cost alone, the 3D printing is gonna save a lot of material cost and also labor cost, right? Both, right? Because like they have this really like good material for building. They're printing with, they're they can insulate you from cold weather and hot weather, and they can last a long time. And then they're gonna save labor. Obviously, they're printing with a machine, right? So we can already see examples of 3D printing in a few places, like maybe Florida or Long Island. There's already houses that are printed and they're selling for a much cheaper price. I mean, not a whole lot cheaper yet because the land is still worth a lot. This real estate trend still haven't crashed completely right now. It's just starting to go down. So the land still worth a lot. So the land still worth 500 grand, but instead of 400 grand on top, making 900, it's only like maybe 150 grand on top. So instead of 900 grand, now with a 650 grand, you can get the same house area, same square footage for a house. So that's another reason why it will push the cost of real estate down. You don't want to buy a house for $1 million only to have almost the same house worth 700 grand because of 3D printing, right? Okay, so that's another reason. So the fifth reason, now we're on the fifth reason. We're talking about prefabricated, cheaper houses. Okay, there's a lot of companies right now out there that are building houses, in their factory. They're not building it on site. They're building in the factory. I'll give you an example, right? There's many examples. One of the more notable one is the Boxabl, right? Boxabl basically creates a house that's foldable. They folded it into a container size and basically deliver that to the first customer in Houston, Texas, right? Elon Musk, right? And then they unfolded it, hook up all the sewage and water, whatever. And now Elon is living in a 500 square foot um, condo made by the company, right? They build a house somewhere else and then move it over here. And the reason why it's so much cheaper is because uh, they build this in the factory, right? They have already pipeline all the steps, and it's all done by machine. And a lot of houses are being done in a similar way. They don't require human labor. The most expensive part of real estate is human labor when it's being built. So when you have these prefab homes where the design, the material, and the labor are all pre-planned to use the most cost efficient, I'll give you an example, right? A 500 square foot condo, or you can call it studio, 500 square foot, right now it only costs 50 grand, okay? So you can basically live anywhere in the United States, well, as long as the land doesn't give you any problem, you own the land or whatever. Just 50 grand on top instead of 400 grand that I showed you before, right? Well, 400 grand is a big house. I mean, but so I mean to compare apples to apples, maybe not 400 grand, maybe a smaller one like a 500 square foot, the would cost about maybe 250, right? So instead of 250 grand, you only need to pay 50 grand for the same house. So that's why this is another huge reason 3D printing is only improving material-wise and efficiency and style. Everything is improving. Okay, like for example, PRNT is a fund that's investing in 3D printing. Disclosure alert: I'm in this fund. Anyway, so now we're on to the wait. So sorry, we're not talking about 3D printing. We're talking about prefab houses, right? So this is now the sixth reason. We're on to the sixth reason. This is similar to prefab houses, but instead of they're being prefab, they're not actually built as houses. They're actually automobiles. Yes, we're talking about RVs, mobile homes. Okay, needless to say, whole country is having this like mobile home movement, right? RV movement, especially in the suburbs, right? Anyone living in like rural states or suburbs, they love the nature, right? Why would they just want to stay in one place, right? I mean, they love the store here, they love the restaurant there in another state. They would love to travel to Vegas, they love to travel to Texas. Why would they want to just live in one place? They love the lakes, they love to look at the sky in the night, in the middle of the forest, right? Why like this is a new lifestyle a lot of young people are embracing for, and even older folks who love nature are also embracing for it right now. And there's so many RV companies in United States already. Winnebago is one of the most famous brand, Winnebago. And then you have a whole bunch of others, right? I'll just give you one example. Like, you see that brownish, whitish RV you see sometimes in movies. That's the old Winnebago model, right? So in there, in a car like that, in an automobile like that, you can sleep 4 people, okay, and you can put a lot of stuff. There's a lot of storage. You have everything, right? You can generate electricity from your gas, or if you're solar powered, you can just have electricity. With electricity, you can also cook. Unless you really prefer gas, then yeah, you can have a gas tank in there. And water, obviously, you can either buy a bunch of water, which is not too expensive, or you can just collect rainwater for your shower. Right? So mobile home is a big trend, and a decent mobile home doesn't even cost 100 grand. Well, that's mostly at most live 2 people, and the living square footage is less than 300. But you can go everywhere and you can live anywhere for 2 people for 300 grand forever. Not forever. I mean, it usually lasts 20 years plus. So that's another reason, right? This trend is also pushing homes down. A lot of young folks, a lot of people who love the nature, love to travel around, you know, would buy a mobile home instead of buying a home in one place where you are forever stuck to it, right? Right. I mean, let's not talk about just young people who want to explore different cities, different lifestyle. Talk about families, right? Let's talk about families who are actually more stable. They still prefer mobile homes sometimes. Why? Come on, the kids are gonna grow up, right? And they may be good primary school, but may not be good middle school or high school, right? And then what do? Do you have to move, or do you have to make sure your kid is really good and like take those exams and got into the good schools, right? I mean, a lot of people are not that smart, right? So they want to be where they can go to a good school, right? So I mean, living in one house, you have to guarantee that house for has good primary school, middle school, and high school. You know how hard it is. Those homes are gonna cost a lot. So, which is why, I mean, I'm not sure how mobile home works with the zoning of the schools, but I bet you, with a mobile home, you can live near your friend's place, or just, and then get an address there, right? So anyway, that's one big reason why. Another reason why it's pushing the real estate price down soon. And now we're on to the 7 reasons. We talk about income inequality, right? Uh, eh, it's like in America, it's one of the biggest, it's maybe the biggest problem is income inequality, right? No other country is this bipolar when it comes to net worth and income generation, right? Like the average American company is like 50,000 a year, right? And I mean, put it this way, right? The top 1% of America owns like 95% or 90% of everything. 1%, they own like 90% of everything. And income wise, you got the top brackets, the top 1% make over 700,000. I mean, the top 5% make over 300,000. And then you got a whole bunch making under 100 grand. It's just like a lot of people are rich as hell, and some people just barely scraping by. So this is overall an issue that all the politicians have to face. They want to get the heart of these people who have lower income to vote for them, right? Because it's a big issue. There's a lot of people. We talk about 90% or 80% people, right, having less than 100 grand income a year. So those people, it's very hard for them to own a home, especially a metropolitan one, and especially if the real estate keep rising in prices. It's already expensive enough that people have to save for 10 years to get a down payment. And if it keeps going up, it will stop making sense completely, and people are gonna revolt. So you don't want, like, no politicians want it. No, so this is gonna also drive a lot of sentiment that people don't want to buy those expensive houses anymore. They're only opting for the cheaper areas, right? Maybe Florida, or Pennsylvania, or somewhere farther away, right? So Pennsylvania also has expensive houses, but maybe Ohio or whatever, right? Like, that's why real estate, if you think it will keep going up, maybe only for the cheaper ones now, the suburban ones, the rural ones, but not the big city. The big city is done. It cannot go higher anymore, right? Because of all the 7 reasons I've talked about so far. Now, the 8th reason I've already mentioned before, it's VR, right? There's much less need to actually do things in the real world these days, right? Whatever can be replaced in virtual reality, like work or entertainment or hangouts, or games, even sports these days. You can wear your headset and, dancing and move and all that. Whatever can be replaced in the VR will be replaced, right? 'Cause who wants to travel? We hate traveling, okay? Thanks to the, conspiracy from decades ago, American rich people and the powerful people decided to opt for automobile instead of trains, right? They want to sell more gas, they want to sell more cars, and they want to make more roads. So they enrich the government by the road money, and they enrich the powerful people with the gas money and the car money, right? And that's why, like, right now traveling is so painful with all this traffic jam, right? So nobody wants to travel. That's why everybody wants to stay in one place. Well, I'm talking about traveling to big cities, right? I mean, rural cities, you can go there anytime, right? So no problem. So I'm always talking about big city real estate, right? So VR is gonna help this a lot, and people wouldn't really care about buying expensive real estate anymore to be near things, because a lot of things are now approachable, reachable in the VR, right? Like, for example, if there's a really popular concert in Madison Square Garden in New York City, like right now you have to drive there, right? Or take a train there or whatever, right? But maybe eventually there's gonna be concerts in the VR. You can still see your popular star, Beyonce, whatever, the real face, the real movements, but you're participating in the VR. You see you see her, like you see the real thing, but you don't actually have to be physically there. So another another reason for why people wouldn't want to buy expensive houses in metropolitan area anymore, when things are reachable in VR, right, instantaneously, right? So okay, one last factor before we wrap this up is that the last factor, the ninth factor, is that basically it's a different era now. The times are changing, right? Everybody has a shorter attention span of everything, right? To lock yourself down for a 30-year mortgage, owning debt for the rest of your life, paying a huge interest to the bank, and just like and living in one place forever, it just doesn't make sense anymore. These days things are very dynamic, things are very flexible and fluid. There's always different ways to get around these limitations. So if you ask someone who's born after 2000, right now they're 20 years old, or they just graduated, right? If they're born in 1995, they just graduated, see if they want to, like, ask them the concept of, like, saving for 10 years and then buying a house and lock themselves down for 30 years. Ask them if that makes sense, right? If you're talking about investment, these days the young folks are very good at investing already. They invest in crypto, NFT, right? They invest in, like, the metaverse, invest in space exploration, electrification. They don't need to invest in real estate anymore. Something so old school, right? I mean, the real estate business is good in the past. It's very boring, but it's good in the past, right? Going forward, they don't want something that's gonna be like, what, 7%, 8%, even 15% return a year. That's like a slow death, right? Like, you just put your money in real estate and hope, right? And hope you live, the next 30 years in peace, and then you'll make some money, right? Who knows how much, right? I know many people in New Jersey, in some areas, when they bought the area, it's really good, right? Good school, everything, 700 grand, right? Good house. You know what happens 10 years later? The exact same price. So you think it's guaranteed to make money in real estate? Of course not. And you have to hope too, right? And if it doesn't make money, then your whole life saving didn't go anywhere. You can forget about, you can forget about like retirement, right? Without social security, you have to retire at 65. So anyway, the times are changing, and nobody wants to be locked down for 30 years anymore. Nobody wants to go through that really annoying process of ownership and selling and like being stuck to one place forever. And this wraps up for the 9 reasons why metropolitan real estate will crash by 2030. Thank you very much. And in the next episode, I'll talk about why metropolitan real estate will actually sustain until at least 2030. Well, so that video will be a slight opposite argument of this one, but that video in the future will be a lot weaker because I have fewer reasons for that one. And it makes sense because I truly believe that metropolitan real estate will crash by 2030. So thank you very much. Have a good day.